Boom. There we go. Now you can hear it. All right, very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at the responsive national state. Basically, we're going to do a quick and dirty review of all of the countries at this time, or excuse me, all of the main powers at this time hanging out in Europe that are going through some changes, okay? So if you look at the time period, 1871 to 1914, this is a big time period in European history, not for huge events like wars and whatnot, but instead it's a big time of internal and international change due to the things happening in Europe. So, what kinds of changes did we see in 1871 that make this a time period of change? Start with 1871. What happened?
Socialism.
Okay, well, yeah, that's big ideas. Yeah, so socialism was more rampant in Europe. So now nations that have that previously had laissez-faire capitalism, they have to compete with socialism, don't they? If they don't want a socialist overthrow of their government, what are they going to have to do to prevent uprisings? Add just a little hint to socialism. So we got our, boiling pot of excitement in each country. You've got your nation that you're baking a delicious dish. You're going to throw a little bit of flavoring in there of socialism. Why? What do you think? Yeah, it keeps the revolution at bay. America did it, didn't we? Yeah, we're a bunch of dirty capitalists in the late 19th, early 20th century. And then Great Depression hits and we're like, whoa, socialism is suddenly, kind of popular. So maybe we should just throw some little hints in there to make sure that nobody overthrows the government. Yeah, and it worked pretty well, All right, and so what are some other big events, though, just in 1871?
Unification.
Thank you. Unification of Germany and Italy. So which war made unification of Germany and Italy possible? Which war was it? No, that was 1861. Alsace-Lorraine was taken in which war? Franco-Prussian, indeed. Who was defeated in the Franco-Prussian War? The French, indeed. Who was the emperor who was taken captive? Napoleon III, indeed. Napoleon III. He was captured at which battle in September of 1870? Sedan, yes. All right. Now, question for you. Which Prussian general was the one that orchestrated this beautiful showdown at Sedan?
Wilhelm.
No, he was the emperor. Otto von Bismarck was the chancellor. Who was the general?
Frederick.
Helmut von Moltke Sr. All right, you guys remember Helmut von Moltke Jr. from the discussion? He screwed up the Schlieffen plan, exactly. His great uncle, though, Helmut von Moltke Sr., is the man that's going to be running the show in the Franco-Prussian War, and he will be the success story there. All right, we'll see the effects of that today and what's going to be happening in France.
That's funny. That's
We're going to film. There you go.
what? Parallel.
Indeed.
How von Moltke Sr. succeeded.
That's why I
How
wrote
von
it.
Jr. screwed it all up.
I know, I'm glad you're enjoying this. All right, he screwed up Germany, whereas Helmut von Moltke Sr. made it all possible, right? Okay. So, let's take a look at how this is a new era, and some other things that I forgot to mention during this time period because I got too excited. We'll see things like internal change, we'll see things like imperialism, we'll see spreading around the globe, because this is a very big time period in European history, and it's all setting the stage for that 1914 showdown. And what is that?
World War.
Oh, our next topic in history, indeed, World War I. So, in this new era, we have unification of Germany and Italy, marking the end of that period of nation building. Okay? So, between 1815 and 1871, we had a lot of attempts at changing up the map a little bit. Countries trying to, unify or declare their independence from various empires, or you name it. A period of nationalism. So when did we see a lot of that nationalism start to get squelched through unsuccessful revolutionary attempts from the streets? 1848, indeed, madam. And yes, you as well. Okay, and so after 1848, they realized you can't have unification from below, meaning the people are doing it, but instead, Cavour and Bismarck will accurately realize, how do you unify your nations? Unify from the top and work your way down. So first you unify at the top, and then you start to organize your strong national state. Every state in Europe is starting to realize that you must maintain your strength domestically if you want to maintain your power internationally. Why is that important? To have strong domestic, a strong domestic type of situation, meaning no revolutions, in order to maintain your international strength.
You have to have stability inside the nation before you can make effects outside of it.
Good. So you cannot make a difference in the world or be a player in the world if you are domestically unstable. And so one thing they're going to start to do to try and promote better tranquility, if you will, in their own states is allow greater voting suffrage. All right, so why would voter suffrage at least indirectly equate to a happier people?
Because what do you think it's say?
They think they get a say. Do they really? Usually. No, but they think they have a say. And so the government might, occasionally listen when it works for them, but really the point is, by 1914, by the time we have World War I, universal male suffrage is pretty much the standard. Rather than the exception, it's pretty much the standard around Europe. Because they realize if we want to avoid revolution, if we want to promote somewhat domestic tranquility, we need to increase the standard of living, and we need to allow some voter suffrage to help us get an idea of how they want us to do that. But typically, they're only going to listen when it works. All right, but for the most part, politics and politicians are having to become more responsive here. You can't be that Friedrich Wilhelm IV who says, no, all of those people down below who want me to be emperor, they are the gutter. I'm not going to listen to them. Right? I'm going to do things my way. You can't be that guy anymore. Now, you need to start listening to the people. And so, politics will have to change because now what they're wanting to do is to start to channel enthusiasm. Rather than allowing revolutionary enthusiasm to boil over into things like the July revolutions or the June uprisings and things like we saw in France, instead they want them to channel that enthusiasm into nationalism. Why? Why in the late 19th century do you want an ultra-nationalistic group of people?
Because they're more likely to do what you say.
Indeed. And then plus, we're starting to spread around the globe, right? In order to want to spread around the globe, you got to feel pretty awesome about yourself. Feel that you have a manifest destiny, maybe, to go and conquer the world, or have this social Darwinism in which you can oppress other people. Because, what are you?
White.
You're white and you're proud, and it's awesome, right? And so you should spread that to the non-whites in the world because they need to know what it's like to be white and proud and awesome, even though they'll never quite get there. So that is social Darwinism, that is imperialism. We're channeling that nationalism, so we're no longer paying attention to our problems inside the country, but focusing on expanding around the globe. So we'll see revolution happening in Russia, though, because they are going to have a hard time trying to respond to the people who are expanding voting rights or any of that stuff. Russia's just frankly going to have a tough go of things after the Crimean War. Why? Crimean War, how'd it go for them?
Terribly.
Terribly! And then they realized, well, we got to change things, don't we? We got to reform. And so what was the first major reform they made? I think it was 1871 or 1861 or 1862. There you go, abolition of serfdom. Very good. So which czar did it?
Is it Nicholas the First?
Alexander. All right, so Alexander II was the guy that abolished serfdom. And how did it go for him 20 years later? Assassinated by a bunch of dirty anarchists as he's crossing a bridge on his way to the Winter Palace. And then they blew his legs off and put him on the desk and said, "Oh, so sorry, my czar." And so after that, czars after him, do you think they're going to be real excited about making dramatic reforms? No! The sons of Alexander II and grandsons are going to be like, "Whoa, keep me away from the people. They are scary." Yeah, okay. So one big thing that we're going to see happening is some territorial expansion and imperialism happening because the dirty Russians are deciding, well, maybe what we need to do is start to expand in the east. Because you see, it's not going so well for us in the west, right? The dirty Turks, they're fading, certainly, but still, anytime we try to mess with the dirty Turks like we did in the Crimean War, all of Europe just gangs up on us. They don't like us in Europe for some reason right now. So the Russians figure, where can we go instead?
Japan.
Not the west, because it's not working out, but the east. Let's go fight off the Chinese and the Japanese and take over Mongolia. You know, it's fun, right? How's that going to go for them?
No.
Okay, tell me about Japan post-1854.
They're
When Matthew
close.
Perry showed
They're
up.
close, aren't they?
All right, they were close pre-1854.
Now we're leading in technology.
There you go. So they are expanding rapidly, especially after the 1860s when they had the Meiji restoration. After the Meiji restoration, they're going to start to rapidly industrialize and import people like Tom Cruise, right? In The Last Samurai. Has anyone seen that movie?
Awesome.
Yeah, okay. So they're importing people like Tom Cruise, who, well, Americans coming over after the Civil War, they're like, hey, we've got all these Gatling guns we're not using anymore. Japanese, you want to pay us a lot of money for them? They're like, heck yes we do. And then they're going to use them against whom? The dirty Russians. So, it's an early February morning. On the cold Pacific Ocean. All right, so in the the Western Pacific, on a very cold morning in February, there's going to be a sneak attack from a modernized Japanese navy going up against a wooden arsenal of formerly great ships in Russia. And what are those Japanese sneak attacks going to do to that navy? Completely destroy it. Okay, foreshadowing. So, completely destroy that Russian navy. And so as the result, we're going to see the Russo-Japanese wars, because the Japanese were thinking, well, hey, the dirty Russians are trying to take over the same areas that we want to take, like Manchuria, so we're going to take it. And so they went to war with them. Now the Japanese, they scored a huge success in that initial sneak attack on their navy, annihilating any chance of the Russians attacking Japan. And then they went up on land and had these massive battles, including hundreds of thousands of men attacking Russian castles and fortresses. Lots of guys dying in the process. Japan almost won. But the problem is that many major European powers have learned over the years.
No land war in Russia.
Thank you! Yeah, you saw it coming. All right. So Japan got exhausted. And so finally Teddy Roosevelt stepped in and he was like, yo, guys, let's just, call it quits. Let's just find a way to make a peace. So Teddy Roosevelt didn't really like the Russians. So who's he going to give a better deal to in the peace conferences?
Japan.
Japan. All right. He's like, yeah, look at the Japanese. They know how to fight. They're good guys, even if they're not white. And so, because Teddy Roosevelt was a bit of a racist too. And so he, gave mad props to the Japanese, as did the rest of the globe at this point. How's Russia looking?
Not very good.
Not very good. Okay, so the Russians are not looking very good. As a result of those external issues, the government spending massive amounts of money and using lots of human lives to fight their wars, now we've got domestic upheaval. And so this is going to lead to a very sad Sunday in January of 1905. They called it Bloody Sunday. Now, this is not where U2 gets the inspiration for their awesome song from 1982, I think, or 84 or something like that. But instead, that's from an Irish Bloody Sunday that we'll see later. So, in the political upheaval that we see in Bloody Sunday in January of 1905, it was a Sunday, so the workers have to go to the factories in St. Petersburg. No. And so at the Winter Palace is sitting the Tsar and his family. They're hanging out at the Winter Palace, and a group of workers, numbering in the thousands of workers here, with their families, so men, women, and children, they were being led by a guy named Father Gapon, who was trying to help them get better voting rights, better suffrage, so that way they could find ways in order to make some reforms, because their working and living standards were so subpar. And so Father Gapon and these workers were walking silently through the snowy streets of St. Petersburg on their way to the Winter Palace and singing God Save the Tsar. And they were carrying all kinds of they had the saintly bling, right? They had all of the pictures of saints, and then pictures of the Tsar everywhere, too, next to that saintly bling. So are these guys that want to overthrow the Tsar? What do you think? As Father Gapon and the industrial workers are marching, do they want to kill the Tsar?
No.
Do they want to do anything to hurt him?
No.
What do they want in this peaceful uprising?
Suffrage.
Okay, they want some changes, minor changes, maybe some suffrage, exactly. What do you think the Tsar's response was? Nicholas.
Kill him.
All right, Nicholas II, kind of a pansy, honestly, kind of a big pansy. Especially, we'll see that in 1917 when the Bolsheviks show up, right? So Nicholas II, he heard that the crowd was coming. They were several miles away, slowly making their way through the streets, and he freaked out. So what he did is he got in his carriage and he took off for Moscow, right? And so he sent out the guards and said, "All right, you guys take care of it." Not a good idea for the leader to leave as he sends out guards with guns to, hold these people off. As they walked up, they simply stood there, kept singing, and then one of the guards just kind of got antsy and opened fire. And then pretty soon, all of the guards opened fire and killed hundreds of people. You can see some of these people just getting mown down in the streets, getting shot in the eye. Ouch. So, not going to be a very favorable situation in Russia after that, because for the next few months, there's going to be an uproar against the Tsar. And so all kinds of things being said against him at this point. So he's going to issue what's called the October Manifesto. Anyone recall from your reading what the October Manifesto said? Anyone? The Tsar is abdicating, correct? No.
No. Isn't it just
Tricked
rules
you
that he
guys.
has to live by or something?
Huh?
Was it the rules that he has to abide by?
All right, so rules that we're all going to abide by. So he's going to say, I'm going to make some changes. Small changes, very small changes. But we still got to remember that I'm the king here. I am the emperor. All right, so he's going to allow full civil rights to Everyone in Russia. So now we don't have any more dirty serfs anymore, right? And so we've got a bunch of citizens that he's going to say, all right, you guys have full civil liberties, which means better equality before the law. We're also going to allow some suffrage here. We're going to have the Duma. We're going to set up the Duma as a parliament in which we have a popularly elected group of people that is going to be elected by universal male suffrage. Is that a huge change for Russia?
Yeah.
A government that's been autocratic since its very beginning. That's a big change, right? So, the Duma is going to be brought in through universal male suffrage, but the big but here is that he says, however, despite all of these lovely changes I'm giving you, we have these fundamental laws. So yes, we will establish the Duma. However, the fundamental laws state that although we have some changes here, who ultimately makes the laws, determines everything, makes the decisions? The Tsar. Okay, so the Tsar is saying, you guys can have a little bit of changes, but I still make the decisions. All right, so do we really have much changing? Okay, they're taking baby steps in Russia. They typically do. All right, maybe it's not a bad thing. I don't think the Tsar could handle, the type of government that we have in Britain at this time, where the Parliament has more power than the king. That probably wouldn't work for him. But then again, if he had made those changes, maybe we wouldn't have ended up with a Bolshevik Revolution. Maybe it starts here. I would argue it does. All right, that brings us to Deutschland. And who is this beautiful man? Otto von Bismarck, indeed. And so Otto von Bismarck decided after the unification of Germany, we have ourselves which Reich? The second Reich. Okay, because the first was? Charlemagne, indeed, sir. So it's Charlemagne with the first Reich, and now we have the second Reich under Otto von Bismarck. What he wants to do is establish a strong national government, and he realizes we need to give the people somewhat of a voice, right? And so he's the chancellor of which body?
Reichstag.
The Reichstag, exactly. So we're going to bring in the Reichstag as the representative assembly. However, he realizes we're going to keep the government strong with him being the leader of this thing, with the Kaiser being the other leader as well, the president, quote unquote. All right, and so what he's going to do is start to try and tinker with society a little bit, because he's got some issues, you see. Remember, Prussia is very militaristic, and it is in northern Germany and in far more Protestant than Catholic. All right, now that they've unified, which states have been brought in under that northern German confederation? Southern Catholic states like Bavaria. Okay, so why did states like Bavaria have a hard time with Otto von Bismarck and Prussia?
Because they're Protestant.
They're Protestant, and they're militaristic, and they're kind of scary, right? Okay, they goose step, and they wear pointy helmets, those Pickelhaben. You guys remember the Pickelhaben? Right, they wear the Pickelhaben, and they have swords on their hips all the time. What? Goose stepping is this. They've done this since the early 1800s. Right, so, huh?
Why?
Because it's a cool march. Are you kidding me? If everyone's going like this, they got the quick step like this, and then they've got the slow, methodical step like that when they're really wanting to show off. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And then when they salute, they go Heil like that. So it's not just the Sieg Heil. We don't get to that yet. But they like go on their toes and they click their heels. A Wizard of Oz thing while they're saluting, right? That part I think is a little lame. But if you ever see, I can't remember if they did that in The Sound of Music or not. But it's getting even more lame at that point. Never mind. So yes.
Doesn't Germany not have an army now?
Doesn't what?
They don't have an army at all, Germany?
They do, but it's a protective force.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I think they may, let's see.
We have.
I can't remember if they sent troops to Afghanistan or not to help us out, because there was a coalition force. But they have troops to submit to the UN, certainly. They don't do a whole lot with their army, thankfully,
Yeah, I know. That's
anymore.
what I heard.
We kind of, 50 years of occupation kind of sent a message to them, I think. Thank you, Cold War. Okay, yes?
Well, we have a lot of we have a big military presence over there.
Yes.
Our field hospitals.
Exactly. So they don't even need it as much anymore.
That's like our Americans
Yeah,
place.
especially Western Germany.
Yeah, where we keep our soldiers.
Yeah. All right. And thanks to that 50-year occupation. Yeah. All right. So the culture comp for Bismarck was this struggle for civilization. But what was he directing his changes towards? What was this struggle all about for Bismarck? Based on your reading, since you all read it, and since we don't need a pop quiz.
No, not at all.
Could you repeat that question?
Yes. The culture comp. What was it a struggle against?
I read about this.
Yeah, it
This
would
is from
not.
last
I
season.
read a lot.
Catholic Central Party.
What was it?
The Catholic Central.
Yes!
He
All
said it
right.
too.
And what was it? And you said it too? I didn't hear you. Yes! Okay. So the Culture Comp, they are focusing on... At least they're making me feel good. Okay. So the Catholic Center Party, they've got this very big group in the Reichstag, and they are opposed to much of what Otto von Bismarck is doing. So in his Culture Comp, what he's trying to do is start to remove some of the rights of those dirty liberals that, some of those Catholics in the Reichstag that are trying to put limits upon his power. So what he is going to do is speak out against the Pope, for instance. Pope Pius IX, he declared that the Pope is infallible, declared papal infallibility in 1870. Part of the reason he did this is because he saw that Germany was unifying. He saw that, Germany was going to start taking those very Catholic states down below and trying to turn them Protestant, is at least what the Pope thought. And so with this, the Pope said, well, hey, I am infallible as long as, I'm the Pope and I'm sitting on the throne of St. Peter. And so therefore, I don't have to listen to guys like Otto von Bismarck. Okay? So with that, maybe, take off Bismarck a little bit.
Just
Yes.
I mean, he's the Pope, and the Pope's essentially saying, I don't like you, and you plan on some purgatory at best, buddy. So Bismarck is going to start to try and limit their abilities in the Reichstag. Is it going to go well? No, it will not. Think about it. Anytime politics gets too involved in limiting things like religion, often doesn't go well. So the Culture Comp is actually going to be very unsuccessful. Things that it will do, though, is show Bismarck that he needs to listen to the Catholics from the southern Catholic states. And so they will find ways to compromise after that. One of the things that they'll compromise on is the fact that nobody likes socialism. And socialism is getting very popular amongst which class of people? The lower working class in Germany. And so with these fears of socialism, part of the reason it happened so rapidly was because there was an assassination attempt on Wilhelm I's life in 1871. Some dirty socialists tried to kill him. And so as a result, Bismarck said, all right, well, now I've got to worry not only about dirty socialist uprisings, but I also have to worry about the Social Democratic Party, which is sitting in the Reichstag and becoming a very popular party because now we're allowing universal male suffrage. So, if you're Bismarck, what can you do as a politician to limit the desire for socialist uprisings, like an assassination attempt, and limit the power of the Social Democratic Party?
Why did they try to assassinate him?
As far as I know, they tried to shoot him, but I don't know the details. So, yeah.
But you
Okay.
can
Take
sprinkle
away the
some socialists.
You can do what?
Sprinkle some socialists.
You can sprinkle a little socialism in the boiling pot of how we create our country, right? So take the politics of the time, so there's a flower of socialism, there's a little dash of socialism, and then we're
It's
going
like
to move on, right?
It's like an immunization.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little.
Just give yourself a little, and then you're immune to it, right? Perfect. I like it. All right. So what he will do is try to out-socialize the dirty socialists. All right. This is essentially the exact same thing that FDR is going to try and do in the 1930s, because communism becoming far more popular as a result of the Great Depression. So Bismarck, what he's going to do is bring in Social Security. What is it?
And you
Retirement.
get, retirement.
Retirement fund, all right, and it's also your safety net in the event of unemployment too, because what you do, what the government does is when you are working, they're going to do what with your paycheck?
Take a little bit out.
Take just a little dabble of it, yeah, just a tiny little bit. Sometimes it's a lot more than you want, but other times just a little bit, right? And then they're going to throw it into a pot, and so this pot will have a big pot full of money, and hopefully, and then in the event that you decide to retire, what are you going to get every month for the rest of your darn life?
Little
Just a
bit.
little paycheck! Exactly. Of course, back then they assumed you'd live like 4 or 5 years after you retired. So it's like, yeah, that's easy. We'll just give you a quick paycheck. Today, of course, it's a lot different. You live until you're like 80. You retire when you're like 60 or 55 even. That's a long time to be receiving a paycheck from the government. So that's why things have changed today. But at this time, it was pretty easy for them to do. And so the socialists were like, whoa, that's a pretty good idea. We can't do that. We don't have that kind of ability. So that made the socialists look kind of bad because he's the man that's doing it. Another thing that he did was he gave national sickness and accident insurance. So does that happen a lot in an industrialized economy?
Oh, yeah.
When you have sicknesses and accidents? Absolutely. And so now, though, he's going to say, well, hey, guys, guess what? I'm going to give you insurance against that. So in the event that you get sick or you get your arm cut off by a machine, I'm going to hook you up and give you money. Hey, that's pretty good, isn't it? Pretty good indeed. All right. And by the way, can the socialists do that at this time? No, they don't got the power to do that. Only Bismarck does. Okay, and then he's also going to give old age pensions and retirement benefits going along with that idea of Social Security. So let's say that you work for the government, for instance, for a certain number of years, you get a pension. And what's a pension?
They pay for retirement.
Yeah, so it's just another retirement addition, basically. So I think, I don't know what it is today. Anyone have any cops or in your family or government workers? Pretty sure it's like 25 years that you work for the government and you get this huge pension. And you can keep working part-time after that and still get your regular pay. And then in addition to your part-time pay, it's pretty good. I mean, pretty dang good. So it's just an addition to your retirement. So, not bad, and it's going to work real well. But then things are going to get interesting when this guy comes to the throne. Who is this guy? Wilhelm the Second. And what do we, affectionately call him? Kaiser. Or Gippy, because what's wrong with Gippy?
Oh yeah, he's good.
Yeah, his left arm is, he had a birth defect, unfortunately for him. But Kaiser Wilhelm II, he comes in, he's a young emperor. I believe he was in his mid-20s when he became emperor. And he's got himself a little bit of a thing that makes him feel a little bad about himself, a little bit of a gimpy arm on the left. So he always tries to cover it by resting his arm on his hip or on his, on his sword or something like that. But he, is that very militaristic to have this on the side of you? No, that doesn't look very cool or militaristic. You gotta do something with this. So he's gonna try and, do that Napoleon complex thing. He's like, I'm gonna make up for it by being really awesome at other things. So he's going to be ultra militaristic. And is he going to be really, listening to the older generation of political leaders?
No.
He's like, thanks, Otto von Bismarck. You did your thing for my dad, but now I'm the leader. And so, what's he gonna do in 1890 to Otto von Bismarck?
Really cool helmet.
Yes, he's got a really cool helmet. Indeed, with the Prussian eagle. Scary. Right? But what's he going to do to Otto von Bismarck in 1890? He came to the throne in 1880, but by 1890, what's he going to do to Otto von Bismarck? Force him into retirement, exactly. And so once that happens, we're going to understand this a little better when we look at both imperialism and World War I with the Bismarckian diplomacy that he's going to use between 1871 and 1890. But basically, Bismarck did a really good job of avoiding hostilities with Russia and making France out to be the neglected stepchild of Europe that everyone picks on the playground and gives a wedgie to and steals their lunch money, right? Nobody liked France when Bismarck was around because who did everybody love?
Bismarck.
Bismarck! Yeah! Now Bismarck's been fired and we got this guy on the throne. So anytime he wants to get something done, basically he does a whole lot of muscle flexing, right? Yeah, take this, look at my guns, they're awesome, look at my boats, they're pretty cool. And then everyone starts to think, wow, Germany's kind of a jerk. Germany's kind of a jerk face. All right, and so as a result, he starts to lose hold of things domestically and internationally, as we'll find out when we look at World War I, the lead up to World War I. But domestically speaking, 1912, the Social Democrats have become the single largest party in the Reichstag. What does that tell you about the change between 1890 when Bismarck gets fired and 1912 right before the war?
Socialism is becoming more popular.
Okay, socialism is more popular because the leader is effectively appealing to the masses. No, he is appealing to the militaristic class of men and the Junkers, the noblemen, but he is not appealing to the lower classes. And so the Reichstag is becoming far more inundated in social revolution or social democratic ideals. However, the Social Democrats will become more and more, I guess you could say, solid in their belief that we need to promote stability instead of revolution. Why would the Social Democrats, a socialist group, not want to have a revolution, but instead promote greater stability in the country through moderate changes? Why would they do that?
And keep getting more support.
Keep getting more support. Because, yeah, bloody revolution sounds good, to the lower classes, because, yeah, let's kill the bourgeoisie. But then at the same time, if you want to get everybody else on your side, you got to say, we'll have just a dabbling of socialism and kind of mix it in there to make it all work for everybody. All right? That'll make them much more popular. Got it? All right. Now let's take a look at Great Britain. So, in Great Britain, we had a prime minister. He was a part of the Young Englanders when he was a young man. he wrote some documents that you read in Sherman about how he didn't like the effects of mining on people. And yet the funny thing about this guy, even though he was trying to help out the working class to some extent to get votes, he was a conservative Tory, and he was opposed to repealing the Corn Laws, right? Because it filled his pockets as well as other Tory pockets. Anyone know who that first Jewish Prime Minister of Great Britain was?
Is
Anyone?
someone Israeli?
Yes! All right, so close. So Benjamin Disraeli. All right. Benjamin Disraeli is going to be defeated by a Liberal member of Parliament by the name of William Gladstone. So why would they bring a Liberal to power in the 1880s in Great Britain?
He's not Jewish.
Well, Judaism, we'll see at the end of this thing, yes. Judaism is having its issues at this point with a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment by the 1880s and 1890s. That could be
That's
true.
not the point.
I concur. I see where you're going with that. Again, we're ending the slideshow with that same idea. All right, but in Great Britain, why would they bring a Liberal who wants to expand the vote and get rid of a conservative in the late 1880s? Mid-1880s.
Well, that's what the rest of Europe is doing.
Yeah, everybody else is doing it, so Britain is almost looking like they're falling behind here. So like, oh, let's bring a Liberal in who wants to help out the working class. And so Gladstone comes in and expands the vote. He brings in, quote-unquote, universal male suffrage. They called it universal male suffrage, meaning that if you were over 21 and a part of some of the upper classes, like, middle class and above, then you could vote. So roughly a third of the population could now vote, and they called that universal. Is it really? No. All right, progress, I guess, progress. All right, but another thing that's going to be happening is as soon as they expand the vote for males and start to dabble in including even working class males, what are the ladies going to say?
Someone.
What about us? Where are we on the ballot there at Parliament? Let's include the ladies. And so what's Parliament going to say? All the way until World War I when all the guys leave and they need someone to vote in their place. Huh? You can say, no. Thanks, but no. And again, no. All right, so what are the ladies going to do? The suffragettes. What are they going to do? They call them suffragettes in England too, by the way. Yes, they started to make some ruckus, didn't they? And so they would march through the streets. They would break into Parliament. They would walk in on parliamentary sessions and say, "Get us the vote!" And so what did these parliamentary members have done to them? What did they do to them? Yeah, they threw them in jail for things like obstructing traffic. So, because women were obstructing traffic or being obscene in their public behavior, they threw them into jails. And so what did suffragettes do to send a message? Hunger strike! Yes! Now in America, they didn't have much patience for that. Girls like Alice Paul, when she was starving herself in a jail cell, they forced a tube down her throat twice a day for 3 weeks and poured like a thick, almost like an oatmeal liquid into her belly, and just shoved it down there. She was just having a hard time with that. And then here in England, though, they just kind of let them do it. Just kind of let them starve. So that sent a message, though, because once the word got out, a lot of people getting angry. So that's still coming, though. That's going to take some time.
Actually starve themselves.
They didn't starve to death, but boy, they were not looking good when they let them out of jail. What they do is let them starve for a while, and they'd be like, all right, get out of here. Don't do it again. And then they do it again and get in more trouble and start starving again. So, but again, Britain does things slowly. They always do things slowly, right? They like to have slow change. And so they're going to wait until World War I to finally force the issue. Another issue that's going to have to wait until after World War I will be Irish Home Rule. Why do the Irish, especially Southern Catholic Irish, want to be let go?
They don't like
They're
these
Protestant.
All right, because the UK is Protestant, exactly. All right, so Northern Irelanders don't mind because they're Protestants too. They call themselves the Orange, right? Because they like being Protestant, being a part of the dirty Brits. The Scottish, they're following along with a lot of these ideas with the Brits. And so Ireland, though, they've always hated the Brits. Why?
They're Brits.
They're the dirty Brits. They gave them the Irish potato famine, right? Duh. I mean, who else would have done that, right? It's not sport or anything that attacked potatoes. No, it was the Brits that attacked their potatoes, and therefore they are the reason we had the Irish potato famine. And then also the British, really since they showed up in Ireland, have treated Irish not only as lower class people, or subhumans even in some cases, but they also treated them like slaves in some cases, where they took over their land and established this absentee rule where they would jack up the rent prices and the Irish would be forced to starve in order to pay their rent. Okay, and so not exactly a favorable relationship here between the British and the Irish. Plus, in the English Bill of Rights in 1689, remember they said that the Irish would not be allowed to own guns and Catholics would not be allowed to own guns. And basically Catholics were not a part of society anymore and the Irish would not be allowed to serve in Parliament. So for that reason, we didn't have any Irish parliamentary representatives after the Glorious Revolution until we get to Daniel O'Connell. So we had no Irish before in Parliament, and now all of a sudden, Daniel O'Connell will be popularly elected as that first Irish Catholic to be elected into Parliament. So he's going to be a big deal. You go through Dublin today, just about everything's named after Daniel O'Connell or Bono, one of the two. Okay. So they're also going to start limiting absentee landowners as well, so that way the Brits can't just go in there and rape the Irish of their land and take away all their rights and make them starve to death. So the Irish are going to like that. But they will keep trying to make progress toward having home rule, meaning independent Ireland. However, that Irish question will have to be put off for a while because they were up for the vote in late July, I think it was late June and early July, of 1914. The issue was up for the vote. But then all of a sudden, by August, what's the bigger issue? World War I, exactly. So, Irish home rule will have to wait. But then we have David Lloyd George. He's going to become the Prime Minister of England during World War I. But before that, he was, I can't remember if he was Minister of the Exchequer or what he was doing, but he was one of the leading Treasury Department ministers, and he came up with this idea in Parliament before World War I that we need to have a people's budget. And in the people's budget, what he's trying to do is, since he is a liberal, he's trying to appeal to the masses a bit. And he's saying that the wealthy need to be responsible for the costs of social welfare. All right, so what do you think? What's the wealthy's response going to be on that one?
No.
I think not, brother. And yet, because we're allowing greater male suffrage, and because they're expanding the electorate to finally become universal male suffrage just before the war, how would the people respond when he says, let's have the wealthy start paying for social welfare issues?
Woo!
The voters will respond enthusiastically, and therefore, they're going to start putting that in there. This will be the beginning of that cradle-to-the-grave socialism idea that will develop in England, especially after World War II. It'll have greater justification later, but that's where it starts to develop. We get that? Very good. Now, let's take a look at the issues happening in France. Okay, so who can tell me? It's January 1871. How are things looking for France? Good? Bad? What do you think?
Right now.
January 1871. What did they just lose?
Franco.
They lost the Franco-Prussian War. As of September 1870, whom did they lose? Napoleon III was captured and held for ransom, and so the French government, well,
Died? Did they kill him?
no, they didn't. I don't remember what happened to him after the war. I never really heard about what happened to him after the war. I think he might have gone into exile somewhere. But as soon as he was captured, the government was like, well, we don't know what to do. So the Prussian army started to surround Paris. Like they went through northeastern France and started to progress towards Paris. And by January, they had completely surrounded Paris. Meanwhile, the Parisians, they were getting bombed like crazy, and you can see what it's going to look like right here in a second. I've got a picture for you. But they were getting bombed like crazy as a result of this thing within Paris, destroying their once beautiful city. And so the Franco-Prussian War, they realized we've got to end this thing. So what they'll do is they'll bring together a new government, a provisional government, since they no longer have Napoleon III. And they're going to have a national assembly, which will be elected in 1871 to conclude a peace with the Prussians. So while the Prussians are just sitting there, the Parisians are trying to straighten out their issues and come up with a way to bring about a peace. So the people that are getting elected into this National Assembly, though, they were a bunch of monarchists and a bunch of conservatives. Is that group going to appeal to the masses?
No.
And what are we realizing we kind of have to start doing? Appealing to the masses, especially after a war has just happened. You got to find a way to keep the people happy because, I mean, things are rough, right? They're out of food, they're out of fresh water, their city's torn up, you got lots of people dead. And so the National Assembly is going to lose the people's affection here because of the fact that it looked like they wanted to establish another monarchy. All right, so this monarchist majority looked as though they wanted to establish a new monarchy once again. And so by March of 1871, the people are getting a bit upset. They had a group of people in some municipal elections in Paris. meaning that we had these city government kind of elections happening in Paris, and in these elections, they elected a bunch of radicals. And who are those radicals that we're talking about here? Jacobins and communards. All right, so the Jacobins, remind me of them. What were they like?
They're the radicals in the French Revolution.
There you go, radicals from the French Revolution. They were formerly led by
Mad Max.
Mad Max. Yes, and who was the other guy?
Robespierre.
All right, Danton. So Georges-Jacques Danton, and they killed both. Okay, so first Robespierre helped kill Danton, by not doing anything to prevent it, and then Mad Max himself killed by this anti-Jacobin uproar. So, the Jacobins, they are a very revolutionary-minded type of group of people. What they wanted to do is they wanted to see the reestablishment of the revolutionary calendar. They wanted to see the development of a third French Republic in which they would have, similar to during the First French Republic, very radical kinds of measures and socialism mixed in there as well to keep the people happy. The communards, how are they even more radical?
They're communists.
They are communists. Again, difference between socialism and communism is?
Communism more radical.
Communism far more radical, exactly. So these guys came to power in the city government of Paris and in other city governments in places like Bordeaux, Lyon, and Marseille. So, what's the government going to have to do if they want to get rid of this situation? The Provisional Government led by Adolphe Thiers. What are they going to have to do?
Listen to the people.
All right. Either listen to the people and give them what they want, but you've got these guys that are making some headway here and getting the people's attention. Can you let them compete with your power if you're Adolphe Thiers?
No.
No. And so what's Adolphe Thiers going to have to do?
Crush resistance.
Crush them mercilessly! And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to start in all of the other little cities like Bordeaux, Lyon, Marseille, and then pretty soon they're going to move in on Paris. And in Paris, they're going to have a time period known as Les Semaines Sanglantes. Does that sound about right? Yeah, I'm going to let Nathan say it for me. Right here. Yeah, all right. My French is pretty good now, I guess. All right, so, Les Semaines Sanglantes, which means the Blood Week. All right, so May the 21st is when the Blood Week begins. Basically, what the Provisional Government will do is round up all the dirty Jacobins and communards they can find, numbering in the tens of thousands. All right, and what are they going to end up doing to them? Shooting them. Not, quietly in a jail cell somewhere, but publicly, in the streets. They will line them up on walls and put them in front of a firing squad, as you can see here. 20,000 people are going to end up getting killed by the government. Then another 38,000 people will be arrested and imprisoned, and 7,000 will be deported. All right. So, does Adolphe Thiers and the Third Republic, do they want to, mess with any of these arguments from the communards or the Jacobins? No, they're going to listen to the people, but not until after they kill anyone who disagrees, right? So you're kind of a heavy-handed, iron-fisted kind of mentality here. And will it work? What do you think?
No.
Will we establish a strong Third Republic after that? We will, all the way until when? World War I. All right, we'll finish this tomorrow.